and small business owners who often are overlooked in those circumstances and often aren't particularly noticed or just sort of poo-pooed effectively by the government there. I'd also just like to query one thing that Andy mentioned in terms of the impact of free movement on public services. We're both from the same borough in terms of Wigan Council, and Andy's correctly identified the pressure on primary school places in his constituency in Lee. But it's rather interesting that at the north side of the borough, you've seen a proposal to close a local primary school because of under-subscription. So I think it's maybe a little bit more complex than free movement, for instance. I think there's an instance there where perhaps there's an idea of actual local councils, how they're allocating their resources and how they're allocating their places.
Was there a question for Will in particular? I will waive my follow-up question for you to ask it.
What I wanted to say is, please be assured, I'm very scrupulous with excluding anything that's due, for example, to automation, like bank branch closures. Oh, sorry, I won't have to shout now. I don't count as among my total anything to do with, for example, automation displacing jobs, like bank branch closures, when they're happening all the time. Things like a shift from high street to online. I don't include hearsay. My wife works for Whitbread, a very large company, and I know that the top layer, or sorry, the middle management layer has been decimated in recent months. But I've seen nothing in print, and so I don't share it. And also there are, sorry, I forget the name of the company. The company just got into receivership in retail, but there is a chance still that they might be purchased out of administration, and so I've not published, I haven't included that. And those closures that do get reported, if they're subsequently rescued, I take them back out of my total. My 36,000 is a very, very conservative, no pun intended, underestimate.
Thank you very much. Let me just move on to the second round of debate, which is how Brexit will affect EU nationals here. And I will open the floor in a minute. I would just like to remind everyone that this is the last election where European nationals will ever have a say in how their city is run, and how their taxes are spent, and how services are run. Post-Brexit, of course, the right that comes with European citizenship to vote in local and European elections will disappear. So, of the 120,000 EU nationals that live here, they will have no voice. Can you tell us how do you plan to mitigate that, and how are you proposing these people, including Andy's wife and others, to have a say on how their city is run? Perhaps we can ask, go to the reverse order, ask Will sorry, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. Are there any more questions, or perhaps even specific questions?
Well, I'd just like to... I'd just like to make a point about the immigration.
Speak into the microphone.
Speak a bit louder. The microphone is on. It's on.
Yeah, just like to make a point about the immigration issue. I've heard numerous times the point made that immigrants from the European Union and indeed from outside the European Union are supporting the social services, the health service and social services in general. I've never ever heard anybody make the point that immigrants also bring purchasing power to the economy. They bring what an economist would call effective demand. That's an important point to complement the point about the way the immigrants support national social services and the national health service. Very important, because the possibility there is that they're actually immigrants to the UK are actually creating jobs. Their purchasing power has a potential to create jobs, and in that sense, it's a very good thing.
Okay.
But that point is never made. So people who believe in the immigration is not the terrible thing that some people do think it is, must make that point. Otherwise, they're missing the trick.
Okay. Thank you. There is a question up there.
Hello, my name is Giovanni. I'm an Italian immigrant, been here for about 9 years. I have a question for Andy. On the 8th of December, you gave an interview where you stated that EU immigrants make our streets unsafe. Did you say this based on any statistical evidence, or you were following UK?
I didn't actually say that.
Well, if you search Andy Burnham, immigration, I did my homework, and the first article that comes up is Business Insider article.
Yeah, can I just answer that question?
Just wait.
Okay.
I will collect a couple, but there is a... is that the question?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. There is another question up there.
Hi. My question is about the NHS and other services. And when it comes to talking of shortages after Brexit, we often hear of free movement as the only solution to the problem. What I want to find out is, are there or have any of you thought of any other solution to this problem besides free movement? If there is no free movement, what else?
Thank you very much. There is a final question down there. If you don't have to answer all of the questions, you can keep going. But do answer the questions that are addressed to you.
I would appreciate, even if it's a short answer from all the candidates to this question, please. This question is about a policy enacted in May 2016 that legalized the removal of non-UK citizens who are rough sleeping. This racist policy will only fuel post-Brexit hatred towards immigrants. A recent Corporate Watch report revealed that homeless charities and local councils are colluding with the Home Office to deport rough sleeping non-British citizens. Rather than these vulnerable members of our community receiving the support they need, they're being criminalised. When piloted in Westminster, there were 127 removals in just 2 months. Local authorities have been invited to bid for Home Office funds to assist with immigration enforcement initiatives. If elected as mayor, would you instruct local councils not to bid for Home Office funds? And would you join the Booth Centre in denouncing this policy?
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Well, I'll start by answering that last question first. And my answer is yes, I will make that instruction, and yes, I will support any groups that are challenging this policy. Most of us on the panel, in fact, I think all of us, know how important it is that we tackle the homelessness problem that there is in Greater Manchester, and we've all got plans to deal with that. We do not deal with it by trying to sweep the problem under the carpet. We do not deal with it by booting people out of Greater Manchester, wherever they're from. So I want to be absolutely clear about that. In terms of the NHS staff shortage, you're right, it's about more than just free movement. What I would say is that the government is not helping us. When the government is cutting bursaries for student nurses, that's exacerbating the problem because it's shutting down access to people who might want to pursue an NHS career. So that's something that I would want to challenge with government from the get-go. In terms as well of the point that you made as well, you're absolutely right. New citizens of Greater Manchester still have powers, even if they don't have voting powers, they have powers as consumers. And that is something that I think we should really harness and really engage with there. And I want to tackle as well the question you had as well about the lack of say. Firstly, I think there might be another set of local elections before Brexit is finalised. I think there's another set due in 2018, so there might be one chance for a final say, although given the voting system we have for local elections in Greater Manchester, whether you can say you're getting a real say in terms of how money is spent and how you're actually governed in those elections, that's probably a point for a far wider debate. In terms of how we actually mitigate the lack of say and lack of engagement going forward, it's going to be about whoever is elected mayor and the combined authority actually going out to events like this, engaging directly with people, listening to the concerns that are raised and acting on them. And certainly that's a hallmark of the policy that I have if I'm elected mayor, and that's exactly what I'll do if I am elected.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You made such an important point about saying the overall contribution, because the figures are very clear. There's a clear net benefit to public services and the economy of free movement. And I and others made that argument in the campaign, but it was frustrating that the evidence didn't triumph over some of the myths that were put around by various media outlets. But no, you're absolutely right, and that point needs to be repeatedly made. To answer your point directly, I didn't say that, and that one article is a big frustration to me. If I were you, I would challenge me if you thought I'd said that, and that was my view, that the people who've come here have made our streets unsafe. I did not say that, and I would never say that. What I said was, and it goes back to the answer I gave to the lady at the back a moment ago, I was making a more nuanced point actually, and nuanced points don't work so well in the world of Twitter and immediate news these days. The point I was making was, I believe the failure of the left to deal with practical concerns about immigration had allowed extremists to prosper, because we'd left a vacuum in our communities for myths about immigration to be created and put around and feeling to be whipped up. And I actually put it at our own door. People were raising concerns with us about immigration, not in a racist way, over the years, some of the practical issues that Will mentioned before, the school places. And they didn't didn't really want to talk to them about it, and they didn't get a response. And my argument I was making in the Commons was, that allowed others then to poison the well, because the public felt they weren't being listened to, and it allowed extremists to come in, and that made the streets unsafe, i.e. more hate crime against people. So it's frustrating, because I know that headline does say that in the article, so I'm not arguing against that, but I hope you'll take it from me that I have fought racism and xenophobia all of my political life, and I would never say something of the kind that was reported in that way. On the bigger question in terms of representation and say, I mean, I find my other half goes on at great length to me about how wrong it is that people can't vote in a general election. These are taxpayers, people here living here, contributing, paying taxes, and not able to vote. It really is wrong, actually. So I think as part of this whole debate, when we are beginning to talk about the status of people who came here before the 23rd of June last year, let's ensure that we cement their status in every possible respect. And that should include, in my view, their voting rights. And the Mayor of Greater Manchester will have a big role, I would say, in making that argument on their...
But you won't be able to enforce it if there is national legislation. Because you won't be able to unilaterally.
But no, of course not. No, I'm simply saying make it be an advocate for people. I'm not saying we could enforce it. And then just to pick up the gentleman's point about the NHS, because I think it's a very, very serious point. It follows on from the point made from the front row. The biggest loser, possibly from Brexit, is the National Health Service. Because the truth is, health tourism, as it's so-called, is always overblown by the right-wing press. There is a greater contribution to the NHS from people who come here from around Europe to work. And the risk is, and it's already happening, people are beginning to drift away because they don't feel welcome anymore. That's why I believe it was a terrible mistake for the government not to confirm the status of EU nationals in the immediate aftermath of the referendum. The question is that you're asking, what do we do about it? And that's why I believe the Mayor of Greater Manchester needs a pragmatic plan to respond to Brexit. So here's my particular answer to that question. I would institute a workforce reform whereby any graduate in Greater Manchester graduating in nursing, midwifery, physiotherapy, or even medicine graduates, I would make a new deal available to them. I would say to them, if you commit to the National Health Service for the next 5 years here in Greater Manchester, we will help pay off your tuition fees. And I think that is a better way of doing things than leaving our hospitals in the grip of private staffing agencies as they are right now. And I believe, as I said at the beginning, trebling tuition fees was never right, but it's particularly wrong now because it may inhibit our ability to bring through the people we need to fill those crucial roles in the workforce. And I think more broadly, we have to change our thinking about the way we support young people. And another idea I'm looking at is having a graduate retention plan here in Manchester. So for people who study here, make it attractive for them to stay here, to keep their talent in this city region. So for instance, offering more subsidised business startup space to graduates of this university or others, or rent-to-own housing, i.e. a route to the housing ladder for graduates. Let's try and keep people who are studying here, let's try and keep them here and let's not go down the path of jacking up their tuition fees, I think as Dimitri was saying. We should be continuing to welcome European students to all of our Greater Manchester universities. Not just welcoming them here, then giving them reasons to stay after graduation.
Thank you very much. Jane?
Okay, well, there's lots of points to answer there. Do you want me to start answering, or
If you answer the ones that already... There's another round of questions, so
okay.
you'll have a chance.
So the main point of this section is around EU nationals. I do think we need to be very clear about what the status of EU nationals is in this country, and that needs to come very quickly, because I think the uncertainty is only detrimental to our economy, it's detrimental to Greater Manchester, it's detrimental to our services in the NHS, so I'd like to hear a message as soon as possible from the Tory government on that. In terms of the last chance to vote, which was one of the questions here, I think that it's quite sad really that people who are EU nationals are losing their right to vote. I think that actually this last chance to vote, maybe the thing to do is to vote for a party that actually says loudly and clearly, if we want to stay in the European Union, that we support our EU nationals coming here to work and to contribute to society and to pay taxes here. Perhaps that's a message we need to go forward. But I'd also like to say to Andy Byrne around the question that was asked about the immigrants making our streets unsafe. I saw that in the press and it was of concern, and I'm pleased that Andy has addressed that point because he's addressed it in a fair way. But I would say what he also said in his answer was that there's been a failure of the left. There's been a failure of the left to be clear about our position in the European Union. There's been a failure of the Labour Party under its current leadership to actually be clear about what the Labour Party really believes about our future. And I'm not confident that the Labour Party that we have today actually believes in a future with close links with the European Union. So I would say look out to other places if you want to support that close links with the European Union moving forward. I would also say that we as a party want to be more inclusive about how we move forward with democracy as well. Will made some very good points in his introduction, that the referendum wasn't just a once-in-a-lifetime decision and that's it. Of course, people made their decision in the moment on what they knew, but there were many things that people didn't know. It was highlighted about the money that isn't going to come to the NHS. People support our NHS and they were misled into believe that we would be getting £350 million a week back to the NHS. That's not going to happen. I think the people who voted Remain, the people who voted Leave, I would appeal them to take another look at the whole situation, and my party would like to see the ongoing dialogue with the public. We want to see a second referendum on the deal that's been negotiated for the people of the UK, for the people of Greater Manchester, because only then can we actually really know what we are voting for, and this is too big a decision just for a small majority of just 52% to take that decision on behalf of everybody. We need to have another look at that. We need to make sure our young people whose future is actually impacted by that is going to, they're going to have a say. So definitely moving forward, we want to make sure our young people and our 16 and 17-year-olds have a vote, as well as our EU nationals that live in the UK. There were other points raised in this section as well. There's a point about the NHS and free movement and how we look at that. I think the point was really about how we're going to cope with the fact we are losing EU nationals and how we are going to move forward with the staffing shortages there. I know that because one of my roles, I work for the NHS, and one of my roles is staff recruitment. And it's incredibly hard, staff recruitment. I think there are lots of reasons why it's so hard, but I think the not having the EU nationals is another problem within that sector. But what I would say is actually that works both ways. I know that when it comes to training medical staff, the UK has many, many very, very positive benefits for, we take Eastern European qualified medical staff. And actually, that is a huge benefit to our country that we welcome Eastern European qualified medical staff into the UK to work here. And that's actually, in many ways, detrimental. I've seen it in Poland that actually they're losing their experience there, their brain drain. But I think this whole idea of freedom of movement is definitely beneficial to everybody, and I would passionately, wholeheartedly want to keep that freedom of movement so that we do have the support for our NHS and social care staff. There was another point about homelessness and rough sleepers. That was another question that was raised. And I would just say I support anyone challenging that position. I completely abhor the idea that we should discriminate amongst homeless people, people who are suffering the very worst in society. We've seen that people are more homeless in Greater Manchester. It's very distressing, it's very worrying. We've got to look at all the reasons why those people are homeless and tackle the underlying causes. But actually, to discriminate between homeless people who are UK or EU or wherever they're from, I think we should just treat people as people no matter where they're from.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so it's ironic, isn't it, that one of the biggest acts of representation was the turnout at the EU referendum. And what we need to try and think about is what does that say about our politics? And the mayoralty, for me, is really important that we get the tone right of what the Mayor of Greater Manchester is going to be to increase engagement in our political debate and society. Because for every day that we don't do that, then you don't represent, you don't know what's happening in our communities, and I think it leads to results that often go against the grain of mainstream opinion. And so, as the Mayor is elected in May, it's pretty important that we say that the concerns of people here in Greater Manchester will be met through this mayoralty, because we ourselves now will have the chance not just to talk about the things that affect us in this city region, but do something about it. I think the Mayor should be thinking about how do we get greater powers over the voting system that we have in Greater Manchester. I mean, there's precedent in the UK where we see differences within countries. There's no reason for me why devolved city regions shouldn't be able to have a greater ability to be able to have a voting system that they choose to see fit. So I would support that. But the question on social care. There is a pressing need now, more than ever, to upskill our domestic population. So I think the question was framed around, if we have tighter controls on migration in the future, if we see that the workforce therefore is declining from outside of the world, how do we fix that? What would we do? Well, first of all, like I said, I think we need to look at the skill level of our existing domestic population. We need to use the apprenticeship levy that is coming to Greater Manchester, all over the country, but for Greater Manchester is worth £60 million to our economy. For our public sector, it's just over £20 million of the levy that's going to be paid. We should be focusing that on in-work progression and making sure that careers in our health and social care sector are attractive for people to be able to want to go into those into that industry, into that sector, because if we don't, then I think we are running a real risk that the pressure to which we all refer to, I think, is going to just get worse. And just the last point on homelessness. Look, I agree with you. The last thing you need when you're supporting somebody who is very vulnerable off the streets is to be checking their identity at the same time. The number one priority is to help that person off the streets. Can the Mayor instruct councils to do certain things, to not apply for this funding? No, they can't. And so, but equally, I think what we need to do is to have a very clear standard here in Greater Manchester, an expectation how we behave and what we say and what we do, is that our focus is helping people off the streets and then to stay off the streets, not checking their identity when we do that.
Okay, thanks very much. We have 15 minutes left, and we're going straight into the third round of discussion. I will get all of your questions, don't worry. If you have specific questions, particularly addressed to individuals here, that's absolutely fine. I'll ask a question that some of you may want to answer, if any, and that is a simple mathematical question. Don't worry, it's not mega complicated, but it has to do with the budget of the new devolved administration, and it's something that I don't know much about it, and perhaps you can help us. If you take together the money you get from Westminster now, plus all of the money that you're getting from the EU, and you put them in one basket, and then you look at the same basket post-Brexit, where obviously the EU money is out of the equation, and some extra funding coming from government is put into it. what is the balance? Is Greater Manchester going to have more or less resources post-Brexit? Because that's a critical question, because otherwise what we're talking about here is a very good democratic exercise, but it's also dressing up cuts, right? Budget cuts. So if you know the numbers, let us have them, please. And let's gather a few more questions. Yes, okay.
Thanks. Thank you, Dimitris. I don't want to answer for the last question, because that's for the panelists, but if we look and see what happened in Cornwall, they got £60 million a year from the EU. Now they are getting 18 million over 6 years, or 18 million over 3 years, so actually a 90% cut compared to what they had before. But I do have a question for Mr. Vernon, if I may. Thank you very much for reminding us that before the referendum, you, as the Shadow Home Secretary, shared the opinion of the then Home Secretary, Theresa May, that leaving the EU would be bad for us. Thank you for reminding us how iniquitous it was that EU citizens in this room did not have the right to vote, even though they have the right to vote in the Scottish referendum. You, as Health Secretary, know, when you were Health Secretary, knew that people like myself in the NHS, doctors, ambulance men, decided to go on strike with only 37% of the electorate voting to go for a strike. It would have been illegal to go on strike with just 37%. In command of all of those facts, you are the only person in this room with a vote that mattered in the House of Commons. And when it came to the crunch vote, or whether to trigger Article 50 or not, you supported the government. Why should I now give you my vote to be Mayor of Manchester?
Yes.
Just wait for the microphone.
No, it's fine. I go ahead with lovely voice. It's fine.
We want it to be loud, not lovely.
Okay, it is lovely. The thing is that you all talked very nicely and very deeply about the problem that we are facing after Brexit. The truth for us, the EU citizens, is that after the referendum, most of the EU citizens were keen to ratify their positions, and they already had exercised treaty rights for longer than 5 years, like myself. I've been married to a British for 20 years, I've been working paid tax for 20 years here in Manchester, in the UK. We've been going through the process of permanent residence and now citizenship. And we find that the number of people going through this process is rising monthly by month. So now we are talking about 37% increase every month, which is a huge sum. And apart the fact that the PR has got a rejection rate of 30% because of the comprehensive sickness insurance issue that we are not talking about here today, but it is a problem. We are talking with the town hall, the Manchester town hall, they can't face, for example, with the passport return service and the nationality checking services, can't face with the number of people applying and asking for these services to support us. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but for us it's a problem because they are asking us to move, for example, and to go and apply for these services, not in Manchester Town Hall, but to Altrincham, Oldham, they're sending far away. So, for example, I have to take 3 days off, one for the PR, one for the citizenship, and one now for the lawyer for things. So I was saying, how can we facilitate? We haven't had the vote at the referendum. Some of us are very cross about it, of course, but we are facing with this situation which is not easy for us. Can you, as Mayor of Manchester, future Mayor of Manchester, I'm asking you, can you improve the service? Can you make it for us easier to access to this service? Can you put more people behind the desk to help us? This would be very good. It would be already something that would facilitate and make us a bit less angry.
Thank you. Any more questions in? You can also ask questions from previous rounds if
Thank you. I know that there are 8 confirmed candidates for the mayoral election and only 4 with us today. Thank you for the 4 who are. That's really good. Could I just ask the chair if the other 4 have been invited?
Yes.
Thank you.
We work it all.
Assuming the
And I
others
have to
decline.
say that before the year, I've been the candidates that have replied. Some have not even replied. And I sent more than one email.
Thank you, that's noteworthy. My question to the candidates who are here, however, is this. What practical experience have you got in actually running something as big as what Greater Manchester is going to be? Do you have really practical experience in doing this job?
Thank you very much. And the final question? Yeah.
Hi, so I have two questions.
Just one.
Well, well, then I would make one a longer one. So I've seen two open doors to discrimination already in this debate, which is very scary for me. One is between European citizens that have been here for longer, a shorter time, so they will be different treatment for European citizens that arrived before the referendum, respect to those that arrived after, or before Brexit, or after. And the other one is about, we are talking a lot about the NHS workers, and I fully agree that they are very important. And you mentioned also that we can't help them with the tuition fees if they decide to work here for more than 5 years. What about the other workers? The other workers that work in other services? Are we discriminating between what they work for? Or are we going to plan an homogeneous treatment to all of us?
Thank you very much.
Another mixed round of questions there. I think, firstly, I agree with the point made up there that actually we did have one of our panel, and the Labour Party and the Tories as well, who have voted to trigger Article 50. I do think when we're looking at the position here, you need to look at who you're voting for, because I would say if I was an MP, I would not have voted to trigger Article 50. So the question was more about budget and devolved legislation, EU money. We're looking at that. Is that the mixture of questions there? But I'm going to start with one about practical experience, because that was a really, really good question. I think the sort of person you want to be mayor, because this being mayor is a really, really massive opportunity for Greater Manchester. You want somebody who can bring all the services together, because the Greater Manchester devolution is the first time we've seen in the country that health and social care is having a devolved budget. We're seeing all the strands of policies come together, so we've got the Police and Crime Commissioner, we've got all the environmental policies as well, we've got planning, we've got the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework, we've got transport that's being brought under the mayoral's power as well. So we've also got the combined authority, and there's different powers that reside with the mayor and powers that reside with the Greater Manchester Combined Authority. So the sort of person you want to be your mayor is somebody who can bring people together, somebody who can work with people who don't share the same views, but also bring all those services together. My experience is working in the NHS. I've worked all around Greater Manchester. I'm a local councillor. So I think you want somebody who is practical and will bring people together, to work together, to make sure all those services work together in a coherent way that benefits the people of Greater Manchester. So I think that's the experience I would offer, and that's the kind of person I would be as your mayor. I would also be encouraging of grassroots democracy. I would be listening to people. I'd make sure that when we are taking decisions on behalf of Greater Manchester, that we actually listen to the grassroots and the voice of the people, that we weren't just there, as many of the Labour authorities have shown in Greater Manchester. Many of them do have a rather top-down approach to democracy, and in terms of consultation, we've wasted a lot of money in consulting on the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework, for example, and I would want to scrap that, because I don't think actually anyone's listened to that consultation. I think we need to move forward from that.
You have 1 more minute, because we need to wrap up soon.
Okay, so final point I'd like to make in terms of what we're losing from leaving the European Union, because that is part of the question here, is I think we've got to think about what we're losing in terms of the positive legislation that we have from the European Union. I would actually trust the current Conservative government to come up with the legislation that really reflects the benefits to our citizens of Greater Manchester, and I'll give you a few examples of that. I think on workers' rights, I'm concerned that we may be losing some of those. On things like, thank you. On the environment, I'm very, very concerned. All of the environmental movement, all of the groups that represent biodiversity, wildlife protection. All of those groups overwhelmingly were voting in favour of Remain, because actually the protection for our environment, on climate change, on air pollution, all of these things depend on our relationship with the European Union, on European legislation. It concerns me a lot that this will not be a priority with Theresa May's government, that we will have those environmental protections, that we will have those workers' rights protections, that we will have the same rights under the law for our people here when we move forward with the UK government. So I will be fighting for that as your Greater Manchester Mayor.
Thank you very much. Andy?
Okay. The gentleman asked me a very direct question. I think he's gone, so I hope you don't mind if I answer it anyway, because it was a very fair question and one that needs a very direct answer. His question was, why did I vote to trigger Article 50? There's a simple answer. I'm a Democrat. No? 700,000 people voted to leave, 600,000 people voted to remain. You know, I see somebody shaking their head. I mean, in my view, that triggered Article 50. That in effect, was the instruction from the public. And this is my answer to Jane. I mean, maybe everybody agrees with this position, but I believe very much that if you've got Democrat in the name of your party, you have to, in the end, respect the democratic process. And there was, for all of its flaws, and there were many, and we would have done it very differently. I voted for EU nationals to have a vote in the referendum. I voted for 16 to 18-year-olds to have a vote in the referendum. I actually did so many things to say that this should have been a better process than it was. But just think about it for a second now. You know, if any person, any representative of Greater Manchester now stands up and says, I'm going to actually actively vote against the democratic wish of 700,000 people in Greater Manchester, can you honestly say that that is a sustainable position for an elected representative of Greater Manchester to take right now? Don't you think that would prompt a much bigger crisis of confidence in our democracy? Don't you think that would actually promote a bigger backlash amongst the 700,000 people who voted to leave, and actually make the climate worse in our communities, and actually create more conditions for hate crime in our communities? It is not easy. Let me answer the question. It is not easy. I'd be the first to say it is not easy. But if I had done that and voted against the triggering of Article 50, I think directly you would have had a bigger crisis of trust going on in our political system. I think you would have had more division in our communities. And I don't think anyone actually, I've heard it this afternoon, can stand up wanting to represent Greater Manchester, saying that you're only going to represent a minority of people and not the majority who voted a different way from you. How can someone stand to be mayor and purport to represent everybody when you're only saying, I'm only going to represent a minority? So that's my answer. Everybody may not like it, but that is my answer. I passionately voted Remain. I campaigned to stay in the European Union. But we are in the position now. Well, so ignore democracy. I think it's a very. If you have a democratic process, if you then seek to undermine it because it wasn't the result that you wanted, honestly, I do not think that brings the country back together after a difficult referendum. I do not think it would bring Greater Manchester back together. The issue now is to get a deal that works as best as it can for Greater Manchester, that maximises our access to the single market, that makes modest changes to freedom of movement, and keeps Manchester as a pro-European city, which is what it would be if I was elected mayor in May. And to answer the gentleman's question, I believe I have got that experience. I ran the Department for Culture, Media and Sport in the last Labour government. I was Chief Secretary to the Treasury in the last Labour government. I was also Health Secretary, and that is a significantly larger budget than the budget of the Mayor of Greater Manchester, which actually, I mean, to answer Dimitri's question, I think it's going to be net down, I think is the answer. And the government still hasn't guaranteed European funding for Greater Manchester, and that is a campaign that needs to be continued. I have that experience. When we left office, the NHS was financially solvent, had the lowest ever waiting list, the highest ever public satisfaction. I have got broad experience from a decade in the Cabinet and the Shadow Cabinet, and I want to put that experience to the benefit of Greater Manchester. But I actually believe, to go back to where I started, this is a very dangerous moment for us all, for the country. And it requires political judgment, it requires political leadership, it requires political experience. And I believe I have got all three. But to answer the question, the gentleman didn't hear it, but at the end of the day, I am a Democrat. And that is why I triggered Article 50, because that was the democratic wish of the people of Greater Manchester. And for me to have done anything else would have created a very divided community. We would have had a backlash in all of our communities, and the Mayor would have had a very difficult job in bringing Greater Manchester back together.
Okay, thank you very much, Sean.
So to your question, Dimitri, Greater Manchester is a net recipient of European Union funding. It funds a lot of our skills programmes, in-work progression, business support, transport infrastructure in Greater Manchester. I know I'm the lead member on the Command Authority for Skills, Employment and Worklessness, and so I've led some of the conversations, actually how we've just got to a point where Greater Manchester will be an accountable body for European Union funding and then voted to leave. So that was not helpful, because I think we need to make sure that as we look at the budgets of the Command Authority, and it's a multi-billion-pound budget, there will be, it depends which way you cut it, as to what number you get to, but there's direct revenue responsibilities for the Mayor. There's also huge influence over things like the health and social care budget and so on. So we need to make sure that we use that properly. Just in relation to experience, so just my view of politics. Politics in general, I think, is, and I'm a huge advocate of devolution. Like I said, I've been one of the leaders of Greater Manchester here who have written some of the devolution agreements that we have to date. I had a choice a few years ago as the Conservative leader of Trafford whether I work with other Labour leaders across Greater Manchester, and I said, yes, I'll do that, of course I will, because actually it's in our interest to set aside, in some respects, party political politics in Greater Manchester, to say that actually what I think has happened, the reason why we have a housing crisis in our city region, why there's strain on public services, why we are not doing what we need to in health and social care in many respects, is because national Westminster-based politics, in my view, has failed Greater Manchester and other parts of the city region, and therefore for us to get power closer to home means that we have to work across party, across boundary, across our self-imposed administrative areas to do that. And so I think the experience that I bring to this, I think, is the right experience of saying that we can take better decisions closer to home. I run a Trafford Council today, I've done for the last 3 years, I've been a member of Trafford for 9 years. And so I think hopefully that will give you some confidence in my ability, not just to say that I have the experience to do it, but also the wherewithal to then work with government in future, but also with other Labour leaders across Greater Manchester, which is important for the Mayoralty to succeed. And equally, that we don't get this paralysis of indecision that I think befits Westminster. We've got to use the Mayoralty to do something very different. Just on the point around, can the Mayor directly do something about the point of your question? No, I don't think they can. It's a Home Office function. But can they certainly Sorry?
Become staff for more people.
No, the question was, can the Mayor do that? And the Mayor, I think, can advocate to say that where you have what essentially is increasing pressure because of the unclear nature of citizenship and so on, and rights of EU nationals, I think the Mayor should be lobbying for increased investment in those services so that we can do it. But it was a specific question, can the Mayor directly do it?
No, the thing is that the citizenship is quite pricey. We pay, if I count from PR to citizenship, how much I spent is over £1,600. And on the 6th of April, there has been an increase of 4% in the citizenship and 25%, booming 25% on the indefinite leave to remain, which is not PR, because PR is dictated by the EU, so they can't increase the PR. But when I say, I mean, this is money that we pay, and we would like to have a service that works. Seems the
well, that's a perfectly reasonable expectation. And so I think the Mayor's role will be to certainly to take those issues and to make those representations very soon.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul.
Well, firstly, to answer your question, Dimitris, we will end up with less public money, with less government investment as a result of Brexit. And Jane touched on this earlier on as well in terms of the structural funds that we received for the capital investment in expansion of the Metro link, for an example there. Also, one thing that hasn't been touched on that stymies the funding we're getting is the decision by the Department for Communities and Local Government to have local councils pretty much solely reliant on their local taxation takes from council tax and business rates. That's a system that, again, benefits areas down south where you have wealthier properties and a higher council tax take from those properties, and again from better business infrastructure, and hits areas in the north quite hard where you get lower value properties and a lower tax take overall. So that's something we have to watch out for, that the redistribution that was taking place between wealthier areas to less wealthy areas is no longer happening, and that's something else that we do have to be vigilant about. To talk about your approach as well, I think there are things that perhaps the combined authority could look at doing, for instance, seconding employees to the City Council and to other borough councils to actually help clear that backlog and help speed things up. So there are many practical things we can look at, ways of investigating that. I don't think we should just leave it to the council and hope for the best. I think there are things that perhaps we can do by working together. If it means seconding employees from other public bodies within Greater Manchester to where they're needed, I think that's definitely something we should look at. Also, on the more general point, in terms of immigration policy, the provinces of Canada, for instance, can have some divergence from the central policy in terms of what they can do with immigration. I think down the road, that's something we should look at for Greater Manchester as well, having a bit more flexibility to welcome people, and perhaps cutting out some of the bureaucracy that we do have in the system. In terms of practical experience, my last job was working in project governance for a multi-million-pound project. It was about really getting the best value for money, really getting action, really getting delivery on the work that was being done in a pretty important field of information security as well, something that is affecting all of us and something that we need to really focus on. In terms of the actual political side of things, I think it's worth remembering that this is a completely new structure of government. So a lot of the experience that is out there is, to tell you the truth, almost null and void. The combined authority is not Westminster. It's not the town halls. It's a completely different way of doing things and needs a different approach. It needs a new approach, and that's what I offer. And in terms of experience of politics, most of my experience, quite frankly, is on the sharp end of politics. It's being as someone who lives in Greater Manchester, who works in Greater Manchester, who travels and has experience of the benefit system in Greater Manchester as well. It's on the sharp end of the political decisions, and it's from that perspective, as someone who actually sees the real-life consequences of the decisions that politicians take, that I bring that particular mindset and that particular viewpoint to the job. And I just want to talk as well, just to touch on the triggering of Article 50, and actually touch as well on your point about workers' rights, for instance, that for all the talk we've had about keeping EU legislation in place on day one after Brexit, there's question marks, serious question marks, about what happens on day two, with senior Tories talking about deregulation of the labour market, others talking about putting a sunset clause on the legislation as well. And I think that's the problem, that given the way that the government have gone about triggering Article 50, this is less about respecting our democratic right than it is about locking Tory policies in to the way we do things in the United Kingdom. And that's why I don't support the triggering of Article 50 at this time, because quite simply, the people of Greater Manchester have voted against those Tory policies for far longer and in far greater numbers than they ever voted for Brexit. I oppose Brexit, I oppose Tory policies, so for me it's nothing less than completely incredible if I don't oppose a Brexit that delivers Tory policies. It's about, again, maintaining that trust